Seymour. There we go.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome. Is that all I do here? I'm ready to leave now? It's time to go?
You're doing a great job.
Okay.
And then another question for you.
Sure.
Is your phone off?
You know what? My phone was back there, but it's not off. It's on the table with my keys.
Okay.
But it will ring when you don't want it to. So,
Okay.
I
I can hand this.
okay, okay.
Gotcha.
You can just turn it off. You familiar with iPhones?
Yeah.
Let me just on the side, just click it off. Okay,
All right.
that'll be fine, Patrick.
Thank you.
Sure. Thank you.
We had that happen in a couple of our interviews.
Yeah.
Alrighty, so thank you for doing this.
Hey, you're welcome.
Appreciate
You're
having
welcome.
you in here. So, to start off with, would you mind by saying your name and spelling it for us?
Spelling is going to be a problem. No, James Diamond Williams. JamesDiamondWilliams.
All right, great. I don't need a pen. Thank you. Alrighty, so let's get it rolling here then. So in my research, I found that you were born and raised in Dayton.
Yes.
Could you tell me a little bit about growing up here in the city and what that was like?
Oh, man. Yeah, I was born and raised here. Started playing drums or started beating around the kitchen at 4 and 5 years old with pots and pans. It was my dad was a musician, he loved music. He was a jazz aficionado, knew about all kinds of jazz artists. And my mom played all reeds when she was in high school. Double reed, clarinet, saxophone, all reeds. So I came from a musical family. I can remember being, 4 or 5 years old. My dad was taking the family to a parade and sitting on the curb. I can remember hearing the band come down the street and the drums. And people getting excited about the drums. Just people started flashing around, bodies moving, all kinds of stuff. I knew right then, Patrick, I said, that's what I want to do, I want to control a crowd like that, man. They got power, So it influenced me early. I started taking lessons when I was 7 years old. Took lessons for 10 years. Went through the all-city orchestra and band in elementary school and in high school. Contests, solo contests for years. Won scholarships in the summertime to Miami University for advanced students in Ohio. I was in a drum and bugle corps when I was 14 years old in an organization called the Pythagoreans, which was a junior Masonic organization. And we had a drum and bugle corps of about, 35, 40, big drum and bugle corps, a marching unit of about 75 or 80. So my early career in elementary and in high school was very involved in music, okay? My dad when I was 12, 13 years old, there was a place called the Jazz Lab here. And my dad used to take me to the Jazz Lab on the weekends. And they say, after I went in there a few times, of course, it's an adult-type situation, club. And they found out I was playing drums. I'd taken a few years of lessons back then. They would say, Jack, let the kid come up and play, And so I'd go up and play with these old jazz guys. And these guys were phenomenal around Dayton. And by the time I was 15 and 16, I was gigging with them, I'd go out of town. They call my father, is Jimmy available? Yeah, let's pack the drums up and go make some money, So I was gigging with these guys at that time. So I was very, involved in music. It was a great time. Anytime a kid can grow up and have things to do during the day and the weekend, stuff like that, makes the week go faster and gives you activities that you can look forward to. So that was primarily my life.
Okay, that was a fantastic answer. You actually kind of touched on a lot of stuff I'm hoping to dive into a bit more in the interview, so thank you for that.
Sure.
So I guess building on what you mentioned earlier about both your mother and father having a lot of musical experience and playing around the house, what influence did that have on you growing up, and what was, if you remember, your first experience with music?
It had a great influence on me. As I mentioned, I can remember my dad when the Colombian record club started, where you could put a few dollars down and get a whole bunch of albums. It's the best day of his life. To get all these Dizzy Gillespie. Is that my phone, Patrick?
I turned it off. I apologize.
That's not my fault. So.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. My fault.
Someone named Jimmy?
Yeah, my brother-in-law, Jimmy Crutcher.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just like spam. No, I'm just kidding. No, yeah, let it ring. I need to turn that off, though, because I'll get calls galore.
I just turned off the ringer on the side.
Okay,
so
that's good.
it's
That's
silent.
good. That's good.
Sorry about that.
So we'll start there again. What was the question, Patrick?
What influence your mother and father playing music around the house had on you, and then your first experience with music? growing
Well, my
up?
dad had influence because he used to mess around with drums a little bit, too. So, you know, a lot of kids get drums today. They get their father and mother buy them a whole set of drums, you know, just a set. And they get there and they just bang and do whatever and make a whole bunch of noise. In my case, that wasn't the event of how I got my drums. I got a snare drum from being in the school, a band. And then for Christmas, my big Christmas gift was a drum. You know, other kids would get other things, but mine would be a drum. And so one year I would get a bass drum. One year I'd get a hi-hat. One year I'd get a shell tom. One year I'd get a floor tom. It took about 20 years for me to get a full set of drums, okay? But in the year that I had to play the individual drum that came as part of that set, I would incorporate it in things that I was playing, you know, before then. And it gave me a chance to figure out what the sounds are, each individual instrument that I was receiving. I thought of it as being kind of harsh at that time because, you know, it took me a while to get a drum set. But looking at it in hindsight, it was a pretty good way to learn and to appreciate each instrument of the drum set and incorporate them. So my dad used to act like, well, not act, but he could play drums a little bit, you know. So when my set started to come in the house, I'd have to say, Dad, I can play that. What? Dad, will you get up and let me play? You know, it was back and forth. You know, he'd be on the set as much as I was. We were going to race to see who was going to play. We had a hi-fi. Hi-fi was a thing back then. He would put on all these, you know, jazz artists and play with them and show me, you know, certain stuff that he knew or he thought he knew as to how to play. And my mom was just, you know, she worked during the day. She worked at McCall's, so she had a job. And as far as music, she probably at that point was involved in music, but not as far as musically playing any instrument or anything like that. She had a love for music, but she didn't go and say, well, you need to play this better. She didn't, you know, tell me certain things that I need to improve on. But she made it available to me to have the teachers that I needed to learn. And the first teacher I had was a band student that was with her in high school. He became the band director of Dunbar High School. So when I first started taking lessons, she reached out to him. His name was Mr. Edwards, Bill Edwards, and William Edwards. And she reached out to him, and he was my first teacher. So, but otherwise, you know, it was just rock and roll, you know what I mean?
Sure.
Yeah.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong here. Was Bill Edwards, was he the teacher with the double bass?
No,
No, was that someone else?
with the double bass.
Was there?
That was going to give me a double bass?
Yeah.
No, that was my mother's uncle.
Okay, because I think I was listening to a podcast where you were talking about that.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I had a chance to get a double bass. My uncle, my mother's uncle, was going to retire from being a musician out on the road. He played upright bass, and he wanted to give it to somebody in the family. And she said, well, you know, Jimmy, you know, you like music. Why don't you play upright bass? Because he's going to give it to somebody in the family. I want you to have it. So, you know, I'm about 7 or so. She said, you know, so when he comes over here, you know, this weekend, he's going to ask you, do you like music? You say yes. He's going to say, what do you want to play? You say upright bass. It's going to be yours. What a thing, you know. So during the week, she schooled me, you know. Jimmy, what do you like music? Yes, Mom, I like music. What do you want to play? Upright bass, you know. I said, upright bass. Yeah, that's what she said. Knock came on the door. He said, Jimmy, he said, I hear you like music. Yeah, I like music. He said, what do you want to play? I said, drums. I looked at my mother. My mother looked at me, and I just wanted to go invisible at that time, okay? Because I knew I was in trouble, okay? I knew the punchline was supposed to be upright bass. I couldn't get it out of my mouth. As soon as she said, "What do you want to play?" I said, "Drums." No hesitation. Only to look at my mom, there was hesitation. Other than that, you know, but of course I didn't get the upright bass. But I eventually became a decent drummer.
I mean, it sounds like, and that's something we'll touch on later. But thank you for that story.
Let me tell you how parental guide can go. I was
Yeah,
playing basketball, 7th grade. Actually, I was sitting at the bench. Tell you guys the truth. I wasn't like at UD playing ball. I was at Highview, sitting at the bench. It's about 5 o'clock. Game started at 4:30 or something like that. My dad was there in the auditorium, and I'm looking over at him, I'm sitting on the bench waiting to get in, maybe, and he gives me a finger like that. I go over to my father, get up off the bench. I go over to my father and say, yeah, Dad. He said, did you practice today? I said, no, I didn't. He said, take that uniform off and go home and practice. Talking about thinking your dad was cruel. Again, I wasn't in the game. He didn't like to snatch me off the foul line, but he knew better than I where I should be and what I should be doing. That's where parents come in sometimes to guide you and to direct you, And it worked out well for me, LeBron is not my friend, but I have great musicians that are.
Do you think that kind of attitude and that approach that he had with you playing sports translated over to your kind of musical talent and prowess like later in life?
It just directed me because, the thing was, my parents told me, if we were going to give you private lessons, we want you to practice, you have to practice. To get better with anything, you have to practice. And it just caused me to be more disciplined, to know that that's what I'm going to have to do. I used to practice some rudiments and some things in my room to a point where I'd start crying because I couldn't play them fast enough. You know what I mean? I wanted to, just couldn't play them fast enough. Get frustrated, But it all worked out.
Well, great. That actually leads me into another question I had for you, because you've talked about the amount of kind of private lessons and music education that you've had playing with also the band, the marching band, and then also in college and university. Could you talk about the impact that music education has had on your life?
Well, it's caused me to travel around the world. I mean, are you kidding me? It's given me the opportunity to see and meet people and, that are involved in this music business. And, heck, it's taken me places I would have never imagined, We used to have a little projector. We used to look at different places around the world. I've been to a lot of those places, We used to look at the great Buddha that was on, in Japan, in the hot springs area and all that stuff. I've been right next to the Buddha, you know what I mean? I've been right there. I've been in the springs, hot springs, It's, it's been tremendous, the influence. Education, it's all a part of learning, I mean, it's hard to be, well, I guess you can play if you don't read music and you have good ears, or but I want to read music. I grew up sight read music and all that stuff, and so it's taken me everywhere that I could not have imagined.
That's fantastic. Thank you. Actually, I'll come back to that one later. So in our research and interviews that we've done with other musicians, we found that many of them who played in marching bands or who played in the school went on to do garage bands and then also the Battle of the Bands. Were you involved with that stuff at the time?
Oh, yeah. When I was in high school, I couldn't get with a band because everybody thought I played just field drums, march and drum and bugle corps type stuff. But there happened to be an occasion where there was a band called the Majestics. And Clarence Willis and Hollis Melson and some guys, Chris Jones, were in a band, and their drummer happened to catch cramps in his arm. And while they were playing, he just threw a stick down, because he's cramping up, he's cramping up, he's jumping up, down, rubbing down. And Clarence, who we call Chet now, Chet said, I wanted to call him Diamond, and he said, Jimmy, can you play the rest of the gig? I said, yeah, And so I took his job. I became a part of the Majestics, only because he couldn't continue to play for an hour. I've been playing for hours all my life, I would be called a drum rat, not a gym rat, a drum rat. And so it was no problem. And so then that part of the age that I was at that time was high school age. And in high school at that time, Roosevelt, Dunbar, they would have talent shows where they had Battle of the Bands, all that kind of stuff. So we became part of that. Yeah, we sure did.
Well, great. And then building on that, how would you describe kind of the feeling or like the kind of culture among the young musicians who were participating in that? Like, what do you remember, if any, like about those battles at the time, or kind of those competitions between different groups?
Well, at that age of life, you have a bigger ego than your head or your body is. You know what I mean? You could whoop everybody. You think you're the best, You're trying to show out for the ladies. The guys is trying to show out for the ladies, And bands, most bands at that time, they had singers, out front. And the singers would always take the ladies home with all that swoops up. And at that time, the Majestics, we had singers likewise. But they couldn't come back singing in key at some point in certain songs. So we fired our singers. We said, we can sing better than y'all right now. Just get out, you know? And that started our progress in bands becoming self-contained, where they would sing and play and do everything that was necessary. But, yeah, that was quite a time during that time, yeah.
Okay, thank you for answering that. That's great. So moving a little bit on to some different subjects.
Okay.
In the documentary, some that we will talk about is the impact of the construction of I-75 and 35 on the city, as well as the white flight. And we're wondering, with all the political and social unrest that was going on at the time, what was it like living and growing up kind of in the city during that period?
The city, you know, it's a little bit like it is today, you know? Confused, okay? Of course, then it was an interracial thing that was going on, more of that, you know? But I guess it is today likewise, to a point. You know, we've progressed, but we've taken steps back here recently. And so I would think on that level and in that form of the political and the social thing that's going on today in Dayton, it might be quite similar. As a young person, I wasn't involved. Well, I have to take that back. There was a guy named Art Thomas who was the president of Central State. And one time he was involved with Model Cities, which was a federal program that wanted to create a better opportunity for black people in Dayton, Ohio. And I was the first youth council president of Model Cities. I was the first president. Likewise, when I was with the Pythagoreans that I told you about, the junior Masonic thing, I was the president over the state of Ohio of all those fraternities in the state of Ohio when I was 20 years old. So I was like the grand poobah when I went to their meetings. They said, the president's here. Yeah, it was me. I'd walk in anybody's meeting and, you know, get ordeal treatment. So I was in a few organizations like that, but it didn't affect me because I had other things that were going on, you know. I didn't get too political. I didn't get too involved because my first love was music. So that took priority over everything else, you know, although I was get involved with certain things, but it was always music.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, okay, that actually will work as a little segue into my next question here. So how did that have an impact on the music you were making at that time, or with the music you made with the Ohio Players down the line?
The music we made with Ohio Players was from the world. You know, we was looking at the world then more so than Dayton, Ohio. You know what I mean? Skin Tight didn't come from Dayton, Ohio women. It came from looking at women in Chicago and New York City and L.A., you know what I mean? Miami, Florida. That's where you see some Skin Tight, you know? But so it came, you know, it came from us traveling, seeing things that were going on. Streaking Cheek to Cheek didn't come from University of Dayton. It came from people running butt naked in the daggone universities across the world. You know what I mean? So we was going around watching that stuff. We was in Boston. We was in different places watching stuff. Are these kids going crazy? You know? So that kind of thing would come. That's where we would spur up certain songs at that time, you know?
That's great. That's great. All right. Well, if you want, we'll take a quick water break, because I'm going to be moving into, unless you don't need any.
No, I'll take a water break.
But I'll
That'd be
move
fine.
into,
Yeah.
into Act 3 and talking more about the Ohio Players and your involvement with them.
All right.
You sounding good? Sweet. Am I jumping around too much more? Camera still with you?
You didn't see better yet?
Sweet. Do you want to see the result?
No, actually don't tell me.
All right.
Okay.
We good?
Yeah, we're good.
We good over here? Yep. Alrighty. So let me, I guess we're moving into talking about the Ohio Players, but before that, you were in a band called the Overnight Lows?
Mm-hmm. The Overnight Low.
Overnight Low, sorry. Could you tell me how you ended up playing with that group and what it was like performing live?
Well, again, that's around the period of time was about 1920. You know, the Overnight Low was a band that was performing in the tri-state area, Kentucky, Indiana, you know, a little bit of Illinois, He felt like he was going somewhere when you're going out of town to play. You know what I mean? You're a big traveling band. And there were a few bands at that time. Of course, Ohio Players were one of them. The Overnight Low. I can remember us being in Paducah, Kentucky, and people would periodically say, "Y'all a good band. You're a good band. But there's one band better than y'all." I said, "Who was that band?" They said, "The Ohio Players." I'd have some disregard about that. You know what I mean? It's like, you didn't have to tell me that. So I immediately had a thing against the overnight of the Ohio Players. Sight unseen. I'd never seen them play it. Now, some people in the band had at that time. In fact, Marvin, who was with the Overnight Low, he went on to be with the Ohio Players and gave me a call so that I got the opportunity. But he had seen the band, but I had never seen the band. They played in nightclubs, and, although my dad took me to the jazz alley and the jazz nightclub, I wasn't allowed to go anywhere else, you know what I mean? I was a regular kid after that, be home by 10, you know what I mean? It wasn't hanging out, nothing like that, and so I had never gotten a chance to see them. But, and they toured around much more frequent than we did, and their area of touring was larger. We went to Tri-State. Heck, they had gone to L.A., they had gone to New York, you know what I mean? Those places we had just heard about at that time. It must be nice. But they were a band. And then there were other bands, that toured, but mostly in Dayton. There was a lot of places that play in Dayton. There were a lot of bands playing just in Dayton that didn't get to the Tri-State area, And but we were quite fortunate. Overnight Low, I can remember when we first were charging people $2,000. We thought we had made it, We had a bus, charging people $2,000. Are you kidding me? Pretty soon I'll be able to have me a family, support somebody around here, But it was a great time, great time.
It sounds like. So you'd had heard of the Ohio Players before you joined the group.
Yes.
How did you end up being a part of the band?
Marvin Pierce, the trombone player with Overnight Low, he went on to be with the Ohio Players. Junie Morrison called him. And Greg Webster, which was the drummer with the Ohio Players, had gotten sick. And so Marvin called me and he said, "Jimmy, y'all playing this weekend?" Because we were playing, not like them, but we were playing. And I said, "No, we're not playing." He said, "Well, you want to come in and sit in for Greg? We need a drummer. Can you come and sit in?" I said, "Yeah." Now, there's a little story about this. We had the opportunity about 2 years prior, maybe a year and a half prior, to play with the Ohio Players at the Lakeview Palladium, the Overnight Low, the Ohio Players. I just thought, Patrick, I said, we are just going to annihilate these guys. I'd never seen them before. This is my big opportunity to, show them what, you know what I mean? We did our show. Patrick, they came up there with these capes and hot pants and all that stuff. When they came up, the women started growing crazy. Panties was flying on stage. Man, they just swapped us like a daggone swashbuckler on a deck of a boat. You know what I mean? They just wiped us out. You know what I mean? So I went to the car, dismayed, downhearted. You know what I mean? Went to the car with my girlfriend at that time, who's my wife today. We've been married 56 years. We've been been together about 58 years. So this is Dayton. And I told LaDon, which is my wife, I said, "LaDon, the band was fantastic." I said, "But the drummer played a shuffle with that band all night long. If I ever get a chance to play with that band, I'm going to take his job." Back to Marvin calling me. So Marvin called me and said, "Can you sit in this week?" I said, "Yeah, I can sit in." Went over there to sit in with that band. Patrick, they called Greg Webster. Went to the hospital and said, "You're not with us no more. We got us a drummer." He was the leader of the band. So it was quite a jaunt for him. Mm-hmm. He's sick in the hospital, now he's gotten fired from the band that he was leader of. In fact, we just switched places. He went to Overnight Low, I went to Ohio Players.
Really?
Yeah,
that
that's the truth.
Well.
Worked out well with me.
Yeah.
Worked out very well with me.
Sure sounds like it.
And that's how it happened, I got an opportunity. I had said it, I spoke it, it came true, just like that.
That's an awesome story. I think you told that in the pre-interview, but it's still that's a great story.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that with us. So I think you mentioned a couple of the venues you played at back in Dayton in the day. Could you talk a little bit about what the music scene in Dayton was like during the 70s and perhaps the impact that had on your musical kind of style and like career and what you were playing?
The Ohio Players was known initially they were called the Ohio Players because they thought of themselves as some of the best musicians in Ohio. Ohio Players. The band took a turn, and the idea and the subject matter of Players took a swing when Shaft came out and all these hustler movies and all that kind of stuff. The Player was a different whole thing then, you know. Player had women, they had, parties. And our band, being the Ohio Players, kind of got swooped up in that Player kind of vibe, you know. Well, it didn't help that we had naked women on our album cover either, okay? That didn't help at all, okay? Probably that catapulted people thinking some of that. But we were kind of risque, you know. When I got in the band, I was 22 years old. Satch and Pee Wee and Marshall, they were 35. You know, I was a little wet pup. I left UD to get with the band, Ohio Players. And these were grown men. I almost slipped there when I said these grown men. You know what I mean? These grown guys. You know, and so I grew up quickly. They had rules, regulations that I had to adhere to when I got in the band, and so it was a lot of growing. You know, and but bottom line is, these guys were dedicated. They practiced every day. 4 or 5 hours every day we would. They were excellent musicians. I mean, Sugarfoot was just unbelievable. Billy Beck was unbelievable, you know. Marshall's a bass player, a tad bit strange, but could play bass, you know what I mean? These guys had personalities. All of them were different. Marvin was a swab guy. You know, he was a swab. He was the guy that taught us all about Maseratis, Ferraris, Lamborghinis, and all these cars that we eventually bought. We had people that were involved in certain segments of life, and they knew about it, that would turn us on about certain things, and we would just adapt it, you know, because they knew about it. We got into buying nice leather clothes and, you know, all that kind of stuff, and, you know, because we was GQ, you know, with the magazines, you know, we were on top of all that stuff, you know. The band, the Ohio Players, was indifferent from any other band that was out there because we did it all. We didn't have a manager. We did it all. We did what we wanted to do. You know, we were the boss. A bit crazy, Patrick, sometimes, but, you know, we had fun. We were all for one for all. You didn't see one without seeing all of us. You know, we were always together over each other's house, hanging out, you know, doing things. Wild, strange, crazy things. We flew planes. We raced cars. We did it. We had a need for speed. Some of us had a need. You see the car I have today, the Z4,
Yes.
you know?
Yes.
Still have a need for speed, you know? But it was Maseratis, Lamborghinis, Ferraris during that period of time, you know what I mean? And all the best of which.
Yeah.
So it was a high time during the 70s.
And I remember in the pre-interview we talked about this. When you were around the time when you joined the band, there was like a label switch, I believe.
Yeah,
and
from
then-
Westbound to Mercury.
Yeah, you guys had almost you did have complete creative control at that point, right? And
Complete.
That was a huge deal,
It's a
especially.
huge deal.
'cause-
Motown took everything from their artists, you
Right.
know. There were other artists that took 50% when you walked in the door, you know. Satch was the leader of this band at that time.
Yeah.
Quite a student in his business, actually, and he just went in there and told them, we're not dealing with this, we're not dealing with that. They asked us, can you come to the studio? No, you're locked out. We're not locked out. You're locked out. We don't need you there. You know, they would say, well, can't we just stop by? For what? Stop by a diner. You don't stop by the studio. We're in here, you know, doing business. We don't need you. And they look at that. But after the first platinum album, they said, we won't bother you no more. We won't bother you. Don't even worry about us, you know. Second platinum album, hey, we won't be, you know. Just got better and better. So, but that's how we were.
Yeah, and those first two platinum albums, those were same year, right?
Same year, yeah.
Okay, so results speak for themselves.
Yeah. And that, you know, that only shows that the amount of material that we had within us to be able to write all those songs, the dedication to the music, to write songs that both albums went platinum. You know, they don't create no platinum junk. You know, it's normally good songs, but it just showed how sharp we were as musicians at that time to write, and a lot of which was written in the studio, right on the spot, you know. Because when we went to do the Skin Tight album, we were leaving one label, Westbound, and Satch went in there and told him to Mercury Phonogram. He said, they asked him, Irving Steinberg was the president, they asked him, do you have any material that we can listen to? Satch said yes, he lied. But within 3 or 4 days, we traveled from Buffalo, New York in the morning, went to Chicago, recorded, went back to Buffalo, played in the club that night, got up the next morning, and did that for 4 or 5 days until we had material to give to Mercury. And it was the beginning of Skin Tight, and we had it, and everything else just fell in line.
Wow, that's amazing. That's quite that level of cohesion, but also the work ethic to fly back and forth and have that. That's impressive.
Yeah, we was hanging out with Rick James in Buffalo, New York at that
really?
time. Yeah,
Oh, very cool.
yeah, he's one of my partners.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fantastic. Alrighty, so talk a little bit more about the. Because I know the Ohio Players obviously became huge and globally recognized, but they also kept a unique sound and something that was distinct despite, there being so many bands in Dayton. What was it about the Ohio Players that gave them such a distinct sound?
I think our musicianship and our orchestration was different than the other bands that were in Dayton. Some of which didn't have horns, okay? Some of which weren't really orchestrating as much as we were with the lyrics, the melody lines, strings, all things that we encompass within our songs. A lot of the other bands didn't have as much musicality, they didn't have as much rhythm as far as it being syncopated rhythm, okay? Their rhythm was more straightforward, okay? When you think about the song Skin Tight and the melody line of Skin Tight, it's quite rhythmic, it's quite syncopated, along with Fire. And so the other bands, they had a groove, no doubt about it, but it wasn't as complicated.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you. Let's see. All right, so another question for you here. I think you talked about this in an interview before, but what do you feel is the importance of live music and a band being able to play their own musical instruments? Like, what's the difference between people playing their own instruments as opposed to, like, using machines or using stems when they're playing?
No spirit. No spirit. In a box, in a computer, there's no soul. How they said, there's a certain amount of spirit that's put within the music, not only in playing it, but in your performance, you have attitudes on how you want to play it. Sometimes you'll hit certain things a little harder to emphasize with accents or whatever. You can't program those different effects or whatever, but it's a lot easier. And the fact that when a band is playing together, it's people. We play together. Machines don't play together. They can be turned on simultaneously, but they're not playing together. It's the thing about that. And one thing we can say about the music that we created, we know today that it's lasted for 50 years. It's yet to be seen whether this music out of the box will last for 50 years on radio or otherwise.
Yeah. Thank you. That was a great answer. So during the peak of funk's popularity in the early 80s, especially with the success the Ohio Players were receiving, what was the kind of national spotlight like being a musician at the time? Like, what was it like being that young and having that level of success? I think you talked about it a little bit earlier, but just if you could touch on that a little bit more and perhaps how you were treated by the music industry in the city of Dayton at that time.
There were so many incredible artists during the 70s. So many incredible artists. To be on the top of the charts for 2 weeks was just, amazing. Because there was so much. We're talking about during the time of Stevie Wonder, Aretha Franklin, Marvin Gaye. I mean, we're talking real artists. We're not talking auto-tune. We're talking people who could sing, okay? And bands, Earth, Wind, and Fire, Cooling, it just goes on and on and on. It was just about keeping up. You really didn't realize, when I was playing Skin Tight and playing the drum parts and all that stuff, all I wanted to do was play my best, I never realized one day that Rolling Stones would name me 72nd best drummer of all time. I didn't even look for that. You know, it wasn't even about that. It was just about putting my mark on things, putting my name on it, and saying I played those drums, you know, and I wanted to be the best, you know. If I heard something in the studio that was wrong, that was the last time I heard that, because I'm going to get rid of it. I'm not going to hear something wrong again, you know what I mean? And that deals with me or any other instrument, okay? But it's just nitpicking to make sure it's perfect as possible. And I think, and the love behind it, the dedication to make sure it is what you want it to be. And you know, when you record, you don't record it just one time. You practice it until you are able to play the part that you want to play. And the most important thing about playing a part is to stay out of the way of everybody else. So, and anybody that will tell you as a musician, it is harder to play simple than it is hard. It's hard to play simple and it's like it's hard to play soft and in tempo. Well, people play loud, but then don't speed up, because it's hard not to speed up when you're playing loud. There's all kinds of control that you have to have when you're a musician, and to be able to put that all together and make, you know, songs that, you know, we still look back and I still listen to today and say, man, I love, you know, I can still hear parts, you know, when we were mixing and mastering. It's just great. It's just wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there a part of any song or any song in particular where you're like, I'm especially proud of this one, or like this one I was on something else and I made it because this is fantastic?
I tell you, in Skin Tight, I played a turnaround that was wrong. Who would be proud of something you played wrong? But you know what I'm proud of? I'm proud of the way that I turned it back around after I made a mistake. That's called an accidental with people playing horns. It's an accidental. In my drum career, that's the only song that I've ever done it. I came out of a pickup, and we're Skin Tight. You know, it comes out where I hit the accent on the one. I came up playing like a normal drummer would play that, because I had to figure that daggone rhythm out, you know, a little bit just to get it right in my head and play it. But in the recording, I played it the way that everybody else would play it. I said, are you kidding me right now? We're 6 minutes into this song. I turned it back around, and most people don't even realize. But the beat goes one way, then I make another turn, it goes right back after about 8 bars. I'm proudest of that.
That's so cool. Do you think that because there's an ability nowadays when producing music to go in and kind of cut out and remove mistakes, that takes like some of the life out of it?
Yeah, people don't sing a song no more, a whole song. They sing one vamp and they splice it and put it in everywhere they want it, you know? Yeah. Back then you had to sing the part until the daggone end. Every time it came around you had to sing it. Like with Skin Tight, a fire roller coaster, you know? We couldn't just edit this, copy, cut, and paste, you know? There wasn't no, you know, computers doing that stuff, you know, at that time. Right. You know, a little bit more work had to be done.
You guys had some longer songs.
We had Skin Tight was an album that it had 6 songs on it. They made a ruling after that you could not have 6 songs on an album. They increased it so you'd have to have more songs. Our theory behind that was, we said, daggone, if somebody's going to play a record, why make a record 3 minutes and 50 seconds or 3 minutes 20 seconds? Make a record 10 minutes and see if they'll play the whole record, you know what I mean? Now, to record it for 10 minutes is another thing, you know? But all of our songs on Skin Tight was based on that theory. If they drop the needle, you know, let's get 6 minutes out of this. Let's get 7 minutes out of the airplay, you know? If they pick it up, that's one thing, but let's see if they'll play it. And in most cases, they did, which is great.
Was that radio who wanted the shorter songs?
Record companies.
Right.
They wanted more songs on the album.
Yeah. Okay.
And that was the way of doing it. You can't have long songs on the album with 6 of them, you know. So the record company said you have to give. I think it's 10 now, actually, but it went up to 8.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. So that's the end of that act. If you don't mind, I'm going to grab a little water as well. We still good with cameras and audio? Okay. Great. Thank you. Appreciate it. Alrighty. No good?
Yeah.
Alright, I've got another question for you here. A little bit of a doozy, perhaps, because the writers have been, when they've been working on this, there's something they kind of keep arguing about. So I figured we'd get your input on this.
So I can argue with you, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm fine with that.
I figure if we get your opinion on this,
Let's do it. Let's do it. Who are we for or against? Let's get it.
So Some say that in the 80s and 90s, funk music faded away or even died.
Mhm.
Others disagree. So we thought, what do you say happened to funk music?
Funk music has not died. It did fade away. Yeah, I guess it was getting less airplay at the time. You know, when disco came in, Donna Summers and that disco, I Love to Love You Baby and all that kind of junk. And Gloria Gaynor with I'm Every Woman and whatever, you know, just went wild, you know. Um, at a period of time in 79, three of the band members, Billy Beck, Chet, Clarence Willis, and myself, we formed another band called Shadow. We left the Ohio Players. And we formed a band called Shadow. We went to Electro Asylum, Warner Electro and Atlantic. And disco was really in at that time. I mean, disco was going great guns. And again, they said, do you have any tracks? We said we had tracks. We didn't have any tracks. They said, well, can you come back next week with your tracks? We did. We went straight in the studio, recorded some disco stuff, came back, told Don Mazel. He said, is this stuff you had, you know, a couple weeks ago? We said, yeah. He said, you could not have written all this music in 1 week. I told him, I said, Don, we just wrote this stuff last week, okay? I just fessed up, okay? I said, we didn't have the stuff, man. We just wrote it. He said, you could not have written all this music. I said, yes, we did. He said, sign him up. Sign this man up right now, you know? Because we're at a position where we could do that. That was easy for us, coming up with tracks. Disco's so easy. All you do is pour on the daggone bass drum. How complicated is that? And everybody, Deodata, everybody was into, you know, disco tracks at that time. And but it just didn't hit our fancy. We were unable to write a hit record with disco, you know. And it was not interesting, you know. It didn't keep your energy going in the studio. It was too bland. It was too straight, you know. And so, but we wrote 3 albums with Leon Ware, who did a lot of work with Marvin Gaye. We did some recording with him likewise on his album or 2 albums he had, and but it was just disco. I think funk was not played as much as disco's not played as much now. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Now funk is being played in various, but you don't hear too many disco stations out there anymore. I don't care where you're at, you know. Not that I'm looking for them, Patrick, but you know, but you don't hear that genre of music anymore too much, you know.
Yeah. Thank you. All right. Well, I can tell the writers to stop arguing now, so thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate that. So also around that same time, Dayton was going through a bit of a, difficult time, as I'm sure you're aware, and with business laying people off, other folks were moving out of the city. Could you feel a difference kind of in the city and among the people living in the city?
We weren't here enough to know.
Okay. Yeah.
We weren't here enough to know.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, for years, it was, you know, I'd come here, kiss the babies, you know, and they say, Dad, you going back to the studio? You going to Chicago? Yeah, I'm leaving tomorrow, you know. That'd be after 4, 5, 6 weeks of being gone. You know, we stayed over in Europe for 8 weeks at a time, you know, just touring Europe. And so being involved and knowing what was going on in the city, you know, we weren't too much engaged. I wasn't, you know. There were 3 of us that were pretty much the workforce in the studio, and that would be Sugarfoot, Billy Beck, and myself. So we did more work in the studio and were gone the longest period of time. The other guys just hung out here and was straight racing their cars and having fun with eating them, doing all that kind of stuff. But we were in the studio doing the work.
Mm-hmm.
So I couldn't answer that. What's going on here, you know?
So did the family ever travel with you when you were going around?
At that time, sometimes they did. Most times they would. Mm-hmm. One of the rules when I got in the band at 22 was your wives didn't go on the road. Similar to Washington, D.C., where the senators and congressmen don't have their wives in Washington. They're at home in their states. And you know what goes on in D.C. I won't tell you what went on with the Ohio Players, but you know what goes on in D.C.
Yes.
Okay, well, we'll leave that there. And because it was a rule, there was no argument about that, you know? Mm-hmm. Sometimes I would have liked to have had my wife there, but the rule was no wives on the road.
Yeah.
And we were called the Ohio Players. Sounds like a trap, Patrick.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Yes.
And we got ensnared a few times.
Yeah.
But that was life.
know, we had Merlin here a while back, and I remember he told us a story. Was it something with the? Do you remember what the story was he was telling us? Something about like cheetah print or something.
One of the band members like went to Australia and like met.
Yes,
a
Marvin.
lady out there. Yes.
Marvin, he's
Yeah.
still in Australia.
Yes, he lives there now.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So.
That's who called me to get with the Ohio players, Marvin.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
I remember he was telling some story about that. I can't quite remember. I don't know. Sorry.
I don't remember the
I
story.
was trying to remember what it was, but I couldn't. But he was. We asked him like, "Hey, do you know any stories?" And he was just kind of lit up. And he's like, "Oh boy, I can't tell most of them, but."
No, you can't tell most of them. Great stories. Great stories. You know.
So, talking a little bit more about how funk it didn't die, but perhaps changed. How did you see funk change and evolve throughout the years?
Well, when Skin Tight came out, the funk idea of playing funk was the bass drum and the bass guitar being in sync with one another. As the Skin Tight, doom, 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 doom. That's what my bass drum was playing, the same rhythm pattern that the bass guitar is playing. Funk has kind of evolved to a point where now, more so than it being drums and bass guitar, you can have a funky horn lick that's being played over something now of the rhythm section. Or you can have a funky vocal line that's being sung. So funk has changed from instrument to different variety of other instruments and vocally, where funk now can be found and heard in the track. And they can be, you can say, well, that's a funky horn line right there, or that's a funky lick that, they just sung right there, you know what I mean? And you wouldn't refer to it as just a nice lick, but it's a funky lick, and that makes a difference. Quincy Jones does a lot of that, where in his orchestration, he'll put funk in different places, with the pocket that they'll play. It could be a guitar, a rhythm guitar, in some cases, that have a funk. Like when they play that funky music, white boy, it's not the rhythm of the bass or the drums. It's the other instruments that are playing funky around that line and all that stuff that's going on, So it's found in various places now.
Okay. Then building on that, do you think that there was an impact that like sampling had on that, or like the evolution or the sound of funk music kind of changing or entering into a new generation?
Sampling I think has an influence on probably the orchestration that these writers and producers are using with that particular style of recording, Sampling is daggone, that took off, and people were sampling other stuff, and they would say, I'd get publishing checks saying, I was part of this record. And I said, we didn't write this record. Somebody sampled our stuff, And I listened to it. You could hardly hear it at all. They were so clever in what they would use, And, but then, I kind of like when people would use our tracks, but they would use it so that, like Too Short and Tupac, they changed the words on it, what I mean? Or like Snoop Dogg, Snoop came out where we did I Want to Be Free, and we say shoop, shoop, shoop. Snoop said, I want to say Snoop, 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 And he had the daggone drum solo that I played. He used the drum solo for his album to open up the record. And I called Snoop. I said, Snoop, you rascal, I could have played that drum solo live. You could have paid me instead of paying the publishing company, We could have made another record. But I think the sampling thing is they're so clever with it, and everybody's sampling and stealing from people and putting in beats and sounds and all kinds. It's kind of hard to detect, what's being used. Yeah.
Have you ever been approached by someone who was like sampling your music and saying, "Hey, would you be interested in like working on the song with us?"
Yes.
Really?
Oh yeah.
Did you find that you enjoyed doing that more than as opposed to just someone like just saying, "Hey, we sampled this. Here's some money"?
I like money. There's something about money I really like. I don't know what it is, but it's just something about money. I don't know.
Sure.
You can buy things with money.
I've heard
I kind of enjoy working hands-on okay, rather than working with samplers, okay? I mean, it gives me nothing to do, you know what I mean? These guys, it's like being in front of a computer. Only one person can be in front of a computer at a time. You know, you can look over your shoulder, but I'm controlling the computer, you know what I mean? With instruments, you know, I can put my hands on it too. I can create sounds. I can, you know, do whatever. So it's a little bit hands off, you know. So I like hands-on stuff where I'm able to create, you know, me create, you know, with instruments, you know, sounds and effects.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, that's great. Okay, thank you. So now we're gonna, if you don't mind, switch gears here a little bit again and talk about the legacy of the Ohio Players in relationship to the city of Dayton, because that is something that's a big focus of the documentary, is kind of the relationship between funk music and the city of Dayton. How there are those parallels there. So nowadays, how has the city of Dayton treated you, the Ohio Players, and like funk music as a whole? Have you guys been kind of embraced or disregarded?
They treat us like crap. Patrick, like crap.
Yeah.
Okay?
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm all in favor of people getting recognition, you know. Edwin Moses got a big old boulevard down. He's got a sign on the highway, Edwin Moses Boulevard off the highway, okay? You ever seen an Ohio Players sign? There's a home of Ohio Players off the highway. You ever seen that sign? You know, I won't tell you who I went to. Yeah, I went to Ryan McGlynn when she was mayor. Put this down, y'all. Make sure you get that. I said, what will it take to get in a street called the Ohio Players? What would it take? She said, put $50,000 in my campaign. I said, Ryan, I won't bother you anymore. Good day. They treat us like crap. Like crap. You know, even in this situation dealing with the funk and all this University of Dayton, I think I told you, Pat, nobody called me. You called me through my PR firm or whatever. Right. Nobody called me. Sharon Grotto, I had to go to the library to have a meeting with the librarian. I said, well, I'll go to the library because that's where the truth is. So I went there and I had a little seminar with them, and but they treat us like crap, you know. Yeah. And I've kind of got used to it, you know. But I decided to do this because I thought some truth ought to be told, as far as I know, and as far as I know from being part of the city and constantly being here. I think I know how things, you know, worked out and were added up and how things were configured and how it was formed and who did what in this industry here. But people have yet to come to me. I'm not a bad guy, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And why they wouldn't, I don't know. Now, there has been times in this band that we got PR for doing, some of the guys in the band, for doing things wrong. That was many years ago, okay? And who doesn't do things wrong, you know what I mean? Heck, and I'm not going to get on Edwin Moses because he grew up right behind me. I mean, we were like neighbors when we grew up, okay? I know him, you know, we used to play football together, okay? So I'm not on his bandwagon. But he had problems too, okay? He got caught with having, you know, some ladies of the night, you know, being with them, you know what I mean? The city of Dayton didn't think too favorably about that. So I don't know if they just, you know, constantly trying to keep the thumb on us because Satch and Sugarfoot did have problems with the drug being caught in a car years ago, and we had no involvement with that. Some of us haven't, you know. I've never been arrested in my life. I've never had handcuffs on me, you know. I've never been detained. My uncle, in fact, was a warden of. He was a police chief of Washington D.C. and a warden of a federal penitentiary. So I got my hair cut when I was 14 years old on death row, where I could see the gas chamber and the electric chair in his prison. It kind of straightened me right up, Patrick. You know, I didn't have no problem with getting involved with, you know, things like that, you know. But, you know, the city here has been, you know, they gave us a street. They gave us a street. It's on Salem Avenue. There's 2 signs on the street that they gave us. Because the street that they gave us is 2 blocks. Did you hear me say 2 blocks?
Oh, okay.
2 blocks, yeah. 2 signs. I had more signs of Ohio Players Way in my house because I took some. Did y'all hear that? I took some. Right. There's only 2 signs.
Yeah.
So I told the people when we were there accepting the street, I said, you know what? I love the people in Dayton, but I don't like Dayton.
Yeah.
I love the people in Dayton. Don't get me wrong. I love the people in Dayton. They have no responsibility, but I don't like Dayton.
Okay. That's a great way of putting it. Yeah, I understand where you're coming from, but also building on that, I think you've had, it sounds like a similar experience with the university. Because I know we talked about that a little bit, because you
Yeah.
went to school here, and I didn't know that until I started doing research for this project. So why do you, I don't know, it's just, it doesn't,
And I got a full scholarship. I got a full ride here, music scholarship. I came from Kentucky State University where I had a full ride. And if you ever seen the Drumline, if y'all seen the movie The Drumline, where the drummers getting beat up and whatever, when I went to Kentucky State, man, being from, they called it the North End. I was on social probation. I got in fights. People broke in my room, stole my clothes. It was all kinds of stuff going on because I was drum captain as a freshman, and the drum captain that was there before was a junior, thought he was going to be drum captain as a senior. I come in there and beat him in the competition. So now I got to throw up and start being Muhammad Ali in different places I go into. People just turn around sucker punching me. You know what I mean? It was crazy. So I had to leave, you know. It was great. So I came here, and I marched here. I marched as a pep band drummer at UD Arena, one of the first pep band drummers, I think, at that time. Marched with the band, parades, field house, back there in the daggone grass with the football team that wasn't winning at that time. Boy, oh boy. But, so yeah, I was here. I used to walk across the bridge because right as I was getting ready to leave, my wife had just had my first daughter, the one that's a Broadway director.
that's right. Yeah.
And she had just had her. And so I used to walk from UD to my girlfriend, soon-to-be wife's house, because she stayed on Smith Street, okay, right across the bridge, within the first block. And I did that for a year and a half, you know. That was my route, you know. Come here, go to school, walk across, spend a little time with my daughter, you know. That was the time. So I definitely went here. Yeah.
Are you familiar with the Funk Center and kind of the work they were trying to do?
The Funk Center?
Yeah, have you heard of that?
No.
That was one of the people we interviewed for this documentary, David Webb.
Oh, yeah, Funk, whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. Joke.
Yeah?
Yeah, you know what? I'm all pro for recognition, but I'm more pro for the artists and their families that need all of the attention, recognition, and more importantly, the money, the proceeds. I want them to share in anything that they're being a part of. I try to look out for the artists. As the manager of this band today, the Ohio Players, my whole function is to take care of my boys. And when I see an organization that's not looking out for the musicians, grabbing their material, their possessions, but not giving the wealth and sharing any of the wealth with those families that these musicians come from, I got a problem with that, Patrick.
Sure.
I really have a problem with that. Because these people have grandkids, they have, you know, people that are closely associated with them, that very possibly that should have gone to them, okay? And what David Webb is going to do with it, or if he's ever going to give it back to those families, you know, I think not, okay? And I'm not with that.
Okay, that's interesting. I know he was, we interviewed him for this along with a few other, maybe like Keith Harrison here. We had the Troutman brothers, and I know he was saying some problems he ran into. He was trying to get funding from the city and trying to get them to help pay for stuff, and they didn't give him anything until he was like, okay, we'll take it somewhere else. And then as soon as he left, they were like, oh no, we wanted to help you. So it sounds like there's a bit of a theme running through all this kind of effort. Whenever some effort is made to do something about funk music, it's a little too late. That's what I've kind of noticed.
Yeah, they don't start with the right, you know, at the right place. I told David Webb, I said, call me. Come by my house. Let's talk. Let me see what you're involved with. Let me see what you're trying to do, okay? Not once has he come by. Not once has he called. Because I'm not going to hear no BS about, you know, the business side of it. I'm not going to take it. So it's better for him not to come by, you know? But, yeah, I've given him the opportunity. And everybody, I guess, that's worked with him has kind of, you know, passed him off after a while.
Okay, thank you for explaining that. Appreciate it. I got another one for you because I found this in an article. Not to, I don't know, not to keep kind of harping on this subject, but it's something that we have found to be really a missed opportunity and really kind of like, it's kind of egregious on this stuff, but it's like, why don't you feel that the Ohio players are in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame?
We're not in.
Doesn't make sense to me. You guys
You
right
know,
there.
we're not in. They recently they inducted tag on a DJ. They doesn't play any instruments at all. Just spins records. Now, how did he get in the Rock and Roll? She get in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
Not even a musician. At first, I thought that it was called rock and roll, so rock and roll artists get in. I'm down with that. If they don't, bring us in, it's fine. But after they get the heavies and Tupac, all these other rappers that have gone in there, some other artists or whatever, their genre wasn't rock and roll. They have widened the scope of musically where they're trying to, I would imagine, they were trying to target with it being called rock and roll. I understood I didn't qualify there musically, period. We didn't play rock and roll. So at first it was like, okay, I'm not, I don't feel, dismayed or anybody, kind of tongueless or, overlooked us in any kind of way. But after a while, I said, man, they have overlooked us. And if we never get in, it's okay with me, Patrick, because on the other hand, I've been so blessed in my life. I've done so much in my life. I've gotten so many accolades in my life. My walls are full with all kinds of certificates and all kinds of, that never comes. It's okay. I've been blessed. C'est la vie. Let's move on. That's not to say that I wouldn't like to be in, okay? But if I don't get in, it's okay. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Thank you for explaining that.
Yeah.
It's a good way of looking at it. So in some of the interviews we've done so far, it's there's been some efforts to kind of have a relationship be between both kind of the city of Dayton, but also funk music. I know that it's Keith Harrison we were talking to. He does a lot of some after school programs where he was working with a bunch of kids at a time when I think he was taking some time off for music for health reasons. So I'm wondering, do you see a relationship between funk giving back to Dayton, or kind of, it sounds like there's perhaps not, the city giving to Dayton, but do you see perhaps an impact that funk music has had on the city of Dayton?
Well, yeah, I see an impact of there, and it continues. The fact that they took instrumental music out of schools was crazy, okay? Because it gave so many kids an avenue to be able to do something that weren't athletically inclined. Everybody doesn't play basketball, football, or baseball, okay? Some kids want to play drums, violins, saxophones. Some people don't have the wherewithal to be able to go get that within the school program. They gave them a monetary benefit of coming from schools and a discount when they went to the music stores to get those instruments. It was all great. It was all great. I think they've lost the whole idea of instruments and music being a benefit to students needs to be looked at again, because it's definitely a benefit. Gives them an opportunity to study and learn the lessons of dedication and practice that can be assimilated with any other thing that they might want to have interest in. And so I think it's a loss for the city. The city has wanted to say that they're involved with funk, but it's never been really involved with funk, okay? They want the credit of funk, and I don't even know what kind of credit they want, because they don't even know what started here and who started it, okay? They couldn't tell you where to begin and who to talk to. So I don't ever see that being something that's going to be achievable within the city, okay? Like I said, they got signs on the highway saying Edward Mose, other people, but they don't have no funk artists on the highway saying this is the home of, even funk. They don't even have that on there. They don't have to mention me. Just say, we're the home. But they don't want to make that determination. So, I don't look forward to that,
Sure. Well, actually, you did touch on something I wanted to ask you more about, which is music programs in school, because that's a big topic in the documentary, is the importance of music programs in school and kind of what's lost by taking them out of schools. And you touched on it, but something I want to ask you specifically is, how do you think your life would be different if there hadn't been music and music education in it?
When I started playing drums, there was a music teacher at Highview. His name was Mr. Unger. And you could start playing instruments in elementary school in the 4th grade. I wanted to play before the 4th grade. I went to a music teacher when I was in 3rd grade. I said, Mr. Unger, can I get a music class? He said, what grade are you in? I said, I'm in 3rd grade. He said, what do you want to play? I said, drums. And I guess the look that I had on my face, he looked at me and he said, you could start playing drums in 3rd grade. And I started playing drums in 3rd grade. That changed my life. I knew I wanted to start playing because I wanted to get into a band, you know. I wanted to play in a band. I wanted to show off. One of the first things I can remember when I first started playing drums, I had a solo. It was at Highview. Gave me a solo. When I started to play my solo, Patrick, I forgot everything that the solo was on. Every daggone note that was on that page, I forgot. I'm up there. And so I just started wailing, man. I just started playing, you know what I mean? All of a sudden, my drumstick drops, Patrick. Look at, I'm 70 years old. I take the drumstick and I throw it up in the air, Patrick. Why did I do that? I don't know. I threw the stick up in the air. I caught it. The class went crazy. They thought I was the best thing since sliced bread. I actually, you know, it's just by happenstance that it fell in my hand. You know what I mean? I'm out there showing off, and it worked out. I couldn't, you know, this is what it provided me, you know, opportunities to do all that, which changed my life, you know. I always remember that. And I always said, why did I pick that drumstick up and throw it? What the heck was, why not just pick it up and keep it playing? I wasn't playing a solo, no way. I was just, you know, just playing. But I picked it up and threw it, man. I looked at that, it's like, wow, this is going to turn out bad, you know. Whap, went straight in my hand. You know, yeah. I went home the hero, man. Kids just calling, hitting me on the shoulder. Oh, you, Buddy Rich, your buddy. Yeah, I am, you know. Man, it was the best day, you know. What a great day, man. Great day. Yeah.
Well, that's a great story. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. There was something else in here I wanted to touch on. I guess, all right, I got a couple more for you.
Okay.
We'll get this wrapped up here. So, might be a simple question, but this is one we've been asking all of our subjects. Where do you think music comes from?
From the heart and soul. From the heart and soul, man. Be it a fast piece or a slow piece. So, you know, of course, more slow ballads and stuff like that oftentimes come from the heart. The words, everything is heartfelt, you know. But fast songs can come from the heart too. It's just about party, you know what I mean? Definitely come from the heart and soul, you know, and from life, you know, opportunities, instances that you've gone through, and different things that you know, learned about or either think of, or relationships that you're in, you know, it all comes from the heart and soul. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's great, thank you. And then another one for you here. What is funk music?
Funk music is music that makes you dance. Okay? Some music doesn't make you dance. Some music you just listen to. Elevator music doesn't make you dance, you know. It's on the elevator, you quiet music. Doctor music in the doctor's office, that's not dance music, you know what I mean? But funk music makes your body move. You know, it's the beat. It's the beat. It's the rhythm of the funk that makes your body move, okay? The rhythm of the funk. Whether it's horn lick or a vocal line or whatever, it's the rhythm of that line that makes your body move.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. That's everything I have. Do you guys have any questions you want to ask? No?
I can lie to all of y'all. I'll just tell you a lie. It doesn't bother me at all. I mean,
well, I think that's everything.
All right.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
All right. You're welcome, Pat.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I really appreciate you coming down here and doing all this.
Hey, man, no problem.
Yeah.
Hope it works out well for you, okay?
Well, so do I. Yeah, that was... Yeah. What's up?
Can I get a picture of you two together?
Yeah.
Is that all right with
sure,
you?
yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
That's a great story about throwing up the drumstick. That's awesome.